and welcome everyone. I'm so glad you could join us in today's Infios webinar, How City Furniture Supercharged Warehouse Productivity by 11%. Before we jump into the fun stuff, let's do a quick round of housekeeping. First, feel free to use the reaction button on your screen anytime during the session. Next, if you have any question for our speakers, just drop them in the Ask Question window. We will do our best to answer them during the Q&A at the end. If we run out of the time, don't worry. Someone of our team will follow up with you directly. This session will be recorded, so you will get an email with the replay link once it's ready. While we're here, check out the related content sections that we have. We have added extra resources you might find helpful. And last but not least, please take a quick moment after the session to complete our survey. Now, let's get into it. Today, we are exploring how City Furniture transformed their warehouse operations using the power of gamification. You will hear real results, smart strategies, and tips you can use to boost your own operation. All right, let's introduce our speakers. Alan, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for spending some time with us today. My name is Alan Oleksak. I'm one of our product directors here at Infios, which means that I get the privilege of working with all of you to build products and solutions that leverage technology to make real-world impacts and solve real problems for our customers, which is something that I'm very passionate about. I've been in the industry for almost 20 years in various roles. Like many people in product management, I started out in a completely different area. I was actually a developer working on Warehouse Advantage and voice implementation projects. But as things went along and my career progressed, I became more and more interested in how our products were affecting our customers' business results. And so when the opportunity arose to get into product management, I snatched it up and I've been there ever since. I've worked with many of our products over the years, but these days I'm in charge of what I call our technology add-ons, things like voice, AMR, our AI tools for WMS, and yes, the topic of today, gamification. I'm very excited to be joined today by Brent Roberts from City Furniture, one of our great customers, and Nick Retzmann from our sister company Vaibe, to hear firsthand how City Furniture supercharged their operation using gamification. So Brent, as the guest of honor, I'm going to pass the mic to you first. Why don't you introduce yourself, and then Nick will give you a turn there as well.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on this great webinar here. So for those that don't know me, again, my name is Brent Roberts. I am currently the Managing Director of Operations for City Furniture. We are a South Florida-based retailer chain. We currently have about 4 warehouses through the entire state of Florida and over 30 showrooms currently. When I joined City Furniture about 7 years ago, like Alan, I was a completely different area of the company, starting supply chain, logistics side, slowly transitioned over to the operations role that I currently in. Before joining City Furniture, I obtained an MBA degree in supply chain management. And really, I've just always been passionate about how data and technology can help teams perform at their best, right? So leveraging that through my career here at City Furniture, when I first joined our operations team, I was basically responsible for creating our inventory transfer department. That department is responsible for sharing inventory across all of our DC locations in Florida. And I've led several other projects focused on operational efficiency and associate engagement. More recently, though, my focus has been on how can we make our warehouse environment more interactive and motivating for our associates, right? In particular, to our overnight pulling and staging shifts that we'll talk about here coming up shortly. And that's why I'm excited to be here today talking about our partnership with Infios and Vaibe and the team, and how together we've been using gamification to improve productivity, engagement, and culture within our operations here at City Furniture.
Great. Nick, you want to take over?
Sure. Thank you very much for having me. I'm super happy to be here today. My name is Nick Retzmann. I founded Vaibe back in the days and now responsible for growth and product, basically overseeing the entire growth perspective of it, but also the product development side. And I can speak for myself, but also for the team. In everything we do, for us, it's super important to understand how warehouses work. What are the core challenges and how we can at least tackle them to create value for our customers. I see a lot of warehouses out there throughout the operations, and we do see certain patterns, but at the very end, all warehouses are also different. So for us, it's super important to also understand how we add value in our marketing, on our sales, in our entire growth perspective, and of course, with the product. Super happy to have this webinar today, close collaboration with Infios, and super happy also to be here with City Furniture.
Great. Well, let's dive right in then, Brent. Why don't we start with our first question here? You mentioned you've been focused lately on increasing engagement and using technology to improve your operations. I guess what were the biggest challenges that you've been facing within your operation before gamification came into play?
Yeah, so really that's a great question, right? And so for us, one of the biggest challenges that we face, being in a warehouse environment, is basically keeping our overnight associates engaged and motivated. So in reality, what we're asking our associates on our pulling and staging shift to do is they get thousands of orders presented to them each and every shift, right? For our last mile delivery for our customers, those associates work anywhere between 5 p.m. at night to 5 a.m. the next day, right? So that's an overnight shift, 12-hour shift. These teams handle hundreds of pieces of furniture every single night. Think of anything from a small vase to a candle to a 300-pound dresser, right? So fast-paced physical environment. So how do we keep those associates motivated and making sure that we're using performance-related KPI decision-making to make them feel engaged with our culture here at City Furniture? So we were really meeting our goals, right, on our overnight shifts. Overall, we were satisfied on how the team's performing, but we wanted to make an experience more engaging, okay? We asked ourselves, how can we create a process where performance feels rewarding and fun and not just repetitive? So we track all of our KPI metrics for performance on our overnight shift, basically on how many cubes or pieces an associate moves on any given hour or week or month or whatever desired timeline we're looking at, right? So how do we use those data metrics that we're gathering every night to make the team feel more engaged in basically their performance? We also definitely had a big challenge in recognition, okay? So, I've heard, we network with a lot of different warehouse companies and other retailers in Florida. And really, we expose kind of our own gap and how are we actually recognizing and rewarding our associates? And that's what kind of led us to the gamification aspects. We didn't have a consistent way to highlight or reward associates who really go above and beyond their required responsibilities each shift. We really wanted a system that made great performance visible and celebrated across the team, okay? Ultimately, our goals were to boost performance, right? Reduce turnover, right? And no matter if you work for City Furniture or other warehouses, that's kind of what you'll see most of the time, right? How do we get more efficient? How do we boost productivity? How to reduce our turnover? And our challenges were the same, right? We're no different. We didn't have a consistent way to highlight or reward our associates and helping people feel connected to their work and proud of their results, right? And that's what kind of led us to exploring the gamification with Infios, and we saw it as a way to bring fun, visibility, and recognition to our nightly operations here.
And just a quick follow-up there. I'm curious. You mentioned you were focusing on the overnight associates. Is that, or I guess, did you see the disengagement? Is that more because of the time of day, or are they doing different processes than day shift, or what do you think was the driver there that was causing the disengagement?
Yeah, 100%. As a leader here, we're required to do pulse checks, right, with all of our associates, all of our leaders. And the number one thing we heard from our overnight associates is, hey, we don't feel a part of the culture, right? When you're looking at the AM operation side of things, you have the owners are here, the senior leadership's here, HR's here, you have everybody here in the building help supporting you, right? On those overnight shifts, it's one manager, one supervisor, and you're responsible for 40 to 60 associates at any given time, right? So, we joke about this a lot, but it's like, you have to be the manager, you have to be HR, you have to be the therapist, you have to be, you're it. You're the all-in-one person there on the shift trying to lead that department. So we really wanted to bring those associates into the city culture. We do a really good job of practicing our CFOS, our operating system here, and how we can leverage performance and gamification to help boost that morale and that competitive spirit that we want to see. And that's what was really lacking on that particular shift there.
Gotcha. CFOS, I like that. Well, Nick, let's hear from you. When you hear Brent talk about, motivating his overnight associates and providing that visibility and that recognition, does that line up with how you typically see things go across other operations you work with?
Yes. I mean, motivation is key for success. And Brent, you touched on this. It's motivation, it's recognition. All of these layers are key for having operational efficiency across basically any warehouse out there. And I fully understand everybody talks about automation, and it's something that definitely picks up in the future. But when we look a little bit closer at the data, and that's something that really stood out to me, is we have only in the US 2 million people working in warehouses. And if you look at the history, this is an increase of 27% over the last 5 years. 27% more people working in warehouses. So for any company out there, for any warehouse out there, employees are key value driver. And at the same time, what we often hear from other warehouses is that they also lack labor shortage. To have a number with me here, 37% of other warehouses lack labor shortages. One of the other key value drivers we often see is engagement. And according to Gallup research, we lose globally 9 trillion globally due to an unengaged workforce. And I talked to a lot of warehouse owners, and they tell me that one of the key disruption topics for them is understaffing. And all of these topics can be tackled by gamification. Create a gamified work experience. Give something back to the people who are doing the job out there, right?
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, it definitely resonates with me as well. I don't have the concrete statistics, but I can definitely say that aligns with what I've seen more broadly. I don't think I've seen an industry analysis in the last several years where labor wasn't at or near the top of the list of challenges. And to your point, more and more, it's not just shortages and retention, it's engagement. I mean, I think about the terms like quiet quitting that have kind of entered the popular vernacular lately. And even though it's more related to remote work, it's basically disengagement. And, I guess if something gets branded and it gets its own verb, it's, good evidence that it's becoming a big problem. That said, I think this would be a great time to get some feedback from the audience. We have our first poll that we'd love you guys to participate in. And we'd love some feedback. Just what, when you think about this topic, what is currently your biggest labor challenge in your warehouse? Is it the turnover? Is it the labor shortages? Is it productivity pressures? Or engagement and motivation? If you could take a few seconds and just go ahead and select an answer, we'll give you a little bit of time and take a look at the results. I feel like we need some Jeopardy music or something here.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of add to some of the points while we wait is, when we look at especially operations here at Citi, right? If we can keep an associate, right, and it's always that 90-day, right? Everybody talks about, hey, can I retain that associate during that new hire phase over 90 days? But it is true, when we have new hires come in and join our operations team, if we can make them feel part of the culture, make them feel welcomed, really give them some incentives, because you can always tell a new hire, hey, go meet this goal for this hour, right? But what are you doing? Are you rewarding that associate? Are you following up with them? Are you coaching and actually develop them? And if that associate does stay 90 days, I mean, I have several associates who started with me 7-8 years ago that I think under prior tenses, right, we were a little bit more of like, hey, this is your productivity metric. This is what you need to meet. Where if you create a more gamified environment, a more interactive environment, those associates really have seemed to exceed more and more throughout the years on how the management team has been able to kind of interact them with our operation.
Interesting.
I just talked to someone who told me in warehouse space, the fruit basket alone is not enough anymore. So especially when you want to find new associates, onboard them, you need to bring them something innovative. That was also something why we founded vaibe back in the days, to bring an innovative tool to the warehouse operations. Gotcha.
Makes sense. Well, I guess, do we have some results coming in? Oh, wow, it's pretty evenly spread. So yeah, it looks like we're kind of having challenges across the board with labor. I guess, Nick, maybe from your experience when you're working with customers, does this kind of line up with what you're hearing in the market?
Yeah, so first of all, it's pretty interesting that we have quite a spread here. I guess all of them can be tackled with gamification, but let's focus a little bit on the engagement and motivation side, probably. With Vibe, you can create challenges around daily tasks of the employees and kind of provide points and coins for certain achievements. And all of this drives at the very end engagement and motivation. With the points, they have a bit of healthy competition and see each other on the leaderboard. Whereas with the coins, they can then redeem rewards in our own store, or I guess we're going to talk about this later, Brent, how we connected it to your reward store. In turn, you motivate them. You give something back to the people out there. And at the same time, we do also understand that creating these new challenges must be super easy for the warehouse manager. They also have a super busy day. So when we designed Vibe back in the days, it was super important for us to have a smooth challenge creation path also for the manager. No disruption of daily tasks, but measurable outcomes, because engagement creates in turn productivity.
And I guess, could you maybe talk a little bit more about why someone should consider gamification versus just kind of the bonus plan that you mentioned before? What is it that really differentiates gamification, takes it to the next level? Nick?
Shall I go?
Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely.
So I guess we do see, as you said, the Senate incentivization plan quite often out there. At the very end, you need to provide something more engaging. Vibe has much more features than just the challenge creation path. We see ourselves as an engagement platform. You can create engagement surveys. You can create quizzes, which helps also in the onboarding or training process. At the same time, in our application, the associates can create an own avatar, which then in turn can be branded a little bit like the company who's providing this tool to them, which again creates a connection for each and every associate to the company itself. When you look at the reward side, you can also create rewards which drive engagement and connectivity to the company. I've seen rewards out there, for example, free food in the cantinery, right? You're doing a good job. It's shown in the Vibe app, and then at the same time, you get something back for the work, right? So gamification in all the facets of Vibe is much more than just create challenges around daily tasks. But that's the core, and this is what drives engagement.
Gotcha. So Brent, I guess where did you first hear about gamification? And I guess when you first heard the idea, what made you think this might actually work for your team?
Yeah, so this was an idea, really spearheaded by our vice president of operations here, right? Again, we were struggling with those same challenges that I know other companies struggle with for the turnover and the motivation side. And it was one thing that we were challenged with going into, just kind of our corporately annual meetings is, hey, how can we do a better job as leadership, right? So we were directly challenged to say, hey, you guys have a problem, right? Go look at the market, see what's out there, and we will allot you a budget to basically test different ideas, right? And I agree. I mean, to me, the one thing that sets gamification up to just regular performance rewards that we were doing previously is the visibility aspect, right? So, when we were issued that challenge, it was more of like, could you do an Amazon gift card? Could you do, we did weekly incentive bonuses, right? But associates wouldn't see that. The team wouldn't see that. You would get your paycheck on a Friday, and yeah, there might be, a $20 reward on there or whatever else we were trying to do, right? But we've really owned it, that challenge. And with the implementation of gamification, I mean, the DC locations have even taken upon themselves they have TVs up in all of our warehouses, right? If you guys ever come to City Furniture and see and walk our operations, departments, we have gamification TVs up. We have leaderboards up, right? Where you can see, hey, Brent was, number 2 last night, but I'm only 3 points or coins, behind him. Where can I go from there? So, we were directly challenged with that task of, hey, how do we solve the turnover and engagement issue on the overnight team? And that's what started reaching us out. We were already a partner of Infios and Corber, and that's where kind of we leverage that relationship here.
Gotcha. So if I'm hearing you correctly, I guess the term I always hear associated with gamification is feedback loops. Is that really what gamification is kind of enabling here? Is just getting the information, encouraging the accountability because they can actually see the progress and that sort of thing? Or am I oversimplifying?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we talk about it all the time, right? Like, our operations team is presented with so many metrics, so many data points, right? They're inundated with, queues per hour, pieces per hour, cycle counts, inventory checks, QA checks, right? But how do you simplify that to your, a team of hundreds of associates, especially on your overnight team, to say, are you doing a great job, and what can we do for you for doing a great job, right? And that's really all, all it boils down to for us. So no, I don't think you're simplifying it. I think closing that feedback loop and making the performance visible and really challenging the team to say, hey, if you perform the way that we're training you and developing you to perform, there is, not only, gamification options, but promotion opportunities. And, it opens the world to a lot of different opportunities that we're trying to get our associates to take advantage of here at Citi.
Probably to add to this one, because that's something also we experienced with Citi Furniture. Often we see operators and associates out there who want to feel really connected to the company. But when I talk to associates, sometimes out there, they ask me like, how can I add value to the operation? What is the core, the North Star KPI basically, that I add value to the company, which I do really appreciate to work for. And with Vibe, you can make that visible, you also mentioned that, and show the people also how they can contribute and how they can add value, but in turn also get something back if the performance is right.
Gotcha. Okay, yep, that makes sense. Well, let's dig into the implementation and the nuts and bolts of the integration and that sort of thing a little bit. How was the rollout? How was the go live on this? I know from our perspective, we spent a lot of effort trying to make this as seamless as possible, but Brent, having gone through it, how smooth or bumpy was it out there?
I think it was very smooth. I think the integration went really well. Obviously, like you mentioned, you're going to experience some bumps really on just the training your leadership team on how to manage those expectations, right? I think one of our concerns going into it was, hey, what do you do about, the lower performers, right? So you don't want to create an environment where, you roll out this gamification platform and then it's visible to everybody. And then you have, Brent over here on the sideline, and he's maybe, doesn't feel a part of the game itself, right? So really it's about training your managers on how to effectively communicate, those kind of issues, and really adding like, no, we own that, right? If you're not performing up to standard, it's not a you problem, it's a we problem, right? The actual implementation though, because we already had a WMS system through Corber, obviously, we still call it High Jump One. Sorry if I'm saying the wrong name, but that's just what we call it. So we were already capturing all of this data, right? We were capturing, really, when you talk about our overnight team, you're either picking furniture, right, or you're staging furniture. So we were already capturing all the pick scans, right, and we were capturing all the staging scans. So the data was already being fed second by second into our WMS system. And it was really just about partnering with Vibe and the team to make that, displayed friendly to our associates and our staff here at Citi Furniture. After that, pretty much it was smooth sailing. I mean, Infios, integrated directly with our warehouse management system. We tracked everything from cubes and pieces, which we'll see here in a little bit. I know I provided an example of what our dashboard kind of shows. And before long, it just became part of our nightly routine, right? And how that worked is the team would come in, the manager or supervisor at night would communicate what the challenge is. Hey team, tonight we're going to go for most cubes for the first hour, the most cubes for the whole shift. And the leader would launch a challenge. Associates would check their scores either on the department dashboards or the TV screens. And by the end of the shift, everybody could see how they performed, right? So the energy on the floor, I think, is probably one of the most positive aspects of it, right? You really saw that energy kind of pick up, especially on the start of shift, right? You're coming in at 6 p.m., you probably picked up the kids already, you had to, eat dinner with the family, and then you're coming in, you might start off a little sluggish, but again, if you're setting a challenge out for friendly competition and naturally working in a warehouse environment, we work with a bunch of, great associates, and they're already competitive. I think most people that work in this kind of environment, myself included, are competitive by nature. So really, that energy shift that we saw from the first couple of challenges is really what stuck out to me. But yeah, the integration was pretty seamless. Really, it's just that communication aspect to your leadership team and just the hands-on training on how to actually set up a challenge and roll that out is, I think, took probably the most time, but it wasn't anything that was challenging for us.
I'm just kind of curious as a follow-up there, I guess, how long did it take before you felt like you were really rolling with it?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I still think we're learning things every time we run a challenge, right? So, I'm someone that just, it's not something that I always feel satisfied on, because I just want us to keep going and monitoring different results. But I'd say overall, what this looked like is, we had a couple calls, right, with the Vibe team. People like Vitor were instrumental in getting us trained and developing our leaders on how to roll out the gamification platform. Over the course, I think, of the first 2 to 3 weeks, where we could run testing games, make sure the associates understood what was happening, how they could see it, how they could log into the app, interact with the application. After that, after the first couple weeks, I mean, I haven't heard any pre-existing issues where we had to go back and roll something back. So, I mean, from that point forward, it's been rolled out. We started with one DC and one shift, and we're slowly rolling out to every single DC and across our entire operations for overnight. So, I mean, we scaled this thing up in the past year tremendously.
Oh, wow. Okay. And Nick, I guess, do you want to talk a little bit just how you kind of structure these projects and how you work with customers on when you're engaging with them?
Sure. I mean, Brent, exactly this energy you just described here is also what we experienced in the close collaboration with you, but also with the Infios team, because at the very end, we have a customer success manager working side by side throughout the onboarding process with the customer. Depending a little bit, of course, on the availability, implementing gamification is not rocket science, and we can be live in 2 weeks, right? It's a structured process. We go in and we understand first, what is the process, who's doing the job out there, what is the key pain points company is looking at, to really then identify very quickly what is the game, what is the challenge we can probably play, right? Now we're connected to WA, to WH from Infios. So integration was really easy, was really smooth. And for us at the very end, we often say, let's start easy with an easy KPI, like, for example, picks per hours, pick rate, and then extend into another KPIs out there. At the very end, key is along the entire onboarding process that there's no disruption. It's not that we're going really into the system. We're just adding, I always say, kind of the cherry on the cake, so to say. And again, if we start easy with an easy KPI, can be live in less than 2 weeks. Nevertheless, we can gamify any success KPI out there. And Brent, you mentioned a few of them, and we're exploring constantly with our customers in collaboration with Infios, what is the next KPI we can gamify, right? And therefore, constantly also, and you said it, kind of learning with our customers, looking at the process, looking at why certain disruption happened, what is the key challenges they currently see, and then proposing also constantly new challenges and new KPIs to gamify. For all the audience out there also, at the very end, we're here to listen, right? And to understand how we can add value with this solution across the entire value chain.
Yeah.
So it's
Sorry,
go ahead, Brent.
I was just going to say, kind of piggyback off that, we talk about challenges, right, in a warehouse setting for gamification. Just an anecdote would be, we were looking at running games per an entire shift, right? And that was a great start. How many picks could you have from the start of shift to the end of your shift, right? So you have that aspect. But really what the management team even took it a step further at Citi is, there's certain KPI points throughout our shift where you notice performance kind of dips, right? And one of those, which we found using gamification, was after lunch, right? So, an example here in the DC that I work at, our overnight team takes break at 12:30 at, in the middle of the night till 1:30 in the morning, okay? So try getting back at 1:30 in the morning, to a warehouse, going back to work. So what we were seeing there was that, productivity always had that dip, obviously, right after that 1:30 a.m. mark. So not only are we running these kind of like macro challenges where it's an entire shift, we also, we're playing around with the idea of, hey, can we run that first hour after lunch challenge, right? When the team gets back from that break, who had the most picks for that 1 hour after break? Okay, cool. You get that, you win that reward. You win that game for the night. So there's so many different ways, even if you start with something simple, like Nick was referring to as far as picks per hour, cycle counts per hour, you can take that one simple challenge and really use it to your benefit and leverage it across, several different aspects of your operation.
Yeah, I'm super glad that you say that, because when we built Vibe back in the days, we really understood that we have, for example, these peak seasons. And then a challenge needs to be set up with just a few clicks. And then a new challenge is launched. For example, I don't know, we have a certain customer request, warehouse needs to be cleared, this area within the next couple of hours. You just set up the challenge with just a few clicks. It's up and running, good communication to the team, and then the challenge starts, right? Glad that you said that.
Yeah.
I just want to tackle one of the questions that in the chat here, just because I think it's a good time to do it because we're already talking about it. So, it sounds like what I'm hearing here is it's a fairly low risk implementation in that you can start small and you can kind of scale up as it makes sense. I'm also hearing that you can really focus in on the areas that you're having problems with, and really any area that has a KPI that you can track. It's possible to gamify. So one of the questions was if one is inclined to invest in automation, how does gamification fit in there? I would assume if you're still tracking the picks per hour and such with the gamification, that's something you could still gamify. Would you say that?
Well,
maybe Nick.
Yeah. Again, as long as you have the data points, you can gamify it, right? And if I understand the question correctly, it's about like, if we look more and more into automation, is gamification still something valuable to the operations, right?
Right. It's not an either or. It's you can still do it. Yeah.
Exactly, right? So as long as you have a data set, as long as you can link the data to either an individual or a team, you can gamify it. One more topic I discuss lately quite often is that probably you create even a challenge around this automation perspective. So it's not man versus machine, but probably man with machine. So that you basically understand also that, yes, there is a certain fear out there for associates for this topic. But if you create challenges around it, it can also help you to smoothen this transition into a more automated warehouse environment. Again, I quoted the Labor Bureau of Statistics, 2 million employees in the US alone doing the job. And as long as it's people out there doing the job, you need to motivate them.
Yeah. So work with the machines, not against them. Don't make the man versus Terminator challenge. Gotcha.
Yeah, we have obviously, equipment that we use in the warehouse. Some of it's automated, some of it's not. But at the end of the day, it's still people coming in here every day. They're moving goods. They're providing a service for our customers. We're just leveraging the gamification application to help them feel more engaged while they're working alongside of the automation of the equipment that we're already providing them to do their job, right? So just another aspect of that.
Great. Well, sounds like things were pretty smooth. It's great to hear that we were able to, deliver on the promise of it being easy there. Let's talk a little bit about results and impact there. So Brent, once the system was live and you were using it, you touched on this a little bit, but maybe just to kind of bring the point home, what were the changes that you started to notice as things went along in terms of productivity and engagement?
Yeah, so, I think after those first couple of weeks, where we're basically doing test runs, right, of the gamification system, the first thing we notice is picking, right? So our picking efficiency prior to gamification versus after gamification. And again, this was based on one DC up in our Orlando area, we actually saw picking performance improve by around 7% over that first 30 days, right? And really, I think that initial surge was just basically from that visibility aspect and providing the associates good visibility on what the performance looked like. And we were running challenges of, hey, total cubes, right? So, one DC in particular, their goal was, let's say, 20,000 cubes of furniture being staged in one night, right? Well, you're constricted there because you're only basically, your demand is what the customer ordered, right? So if the customer ordered 20,000 cubes of furniture across all of our customers in the Orlando market, well, how do you then go beyond that, right? But, there's so much other work that's provided in our warehouse that the associates could do during those kind of downtime or non-peak times. And so when I say, we increase picking efficiency by 7% because, hey, if you're done with that task on the overnight shift, we actually saw associates start other tasks, right? Naturally, without being prompted, without being told, hey, we're changing over to this. So, we run a receiving department 24 hours a day, right, for the inbound side. So, when they were done picking orders, everybody would start just going away and putting receiving away, right? So that's really, I think, what spiked that first month, and the associates kind of, it was great to see that. I think overall, when we look across all the DCs that are running it, we're seeing about a 10 to 11% increase in efficiency. And by that, we're monitoring both pieces and cubes, right? So units of furniture or cubic feet of furniture, we only ask our associates to be, we call it green, right? So at goal or one or the other, right? So when we say 10%, 11% improvement, that's a combination of both those picks and load scans increasing. And really the main point here is just like we mentioned before, like the engagement, right? So associates started staying more focused throughout the shift. I think that's one of the key elements of this on how to measure performance, right? Like I mentioned, even after finishing their assigned orders, someone looked for additional work, whether it be the receiving portion or cycle counting or another aspect to keep those pieces and cubes kind of coming through their application to stay in the game, stay in, first place, second place, third place, whatever. And then that level of self-motivation was something that I think beforehand we just didn't have, right? I think it was always that, we check one box, you move on to another box. You check that box, you move on to another box. But it was always management led. It was always the manager having to go back on the floor and say, okay, now we're moving to this, or okay, we have some downtime, now we move to that. So that self-motivation that we saw from the associates and engagement was definitely impressive to see over that initial rollout. But, I think just, regardless of the productivity efficiencies that we've seen, really just the communication engagement of the associates peer-to-peer has been something too that's helped tremendously. I hear stories, we have an ultimate update every night, right? So every night we have a team meeting, and they review the leaderboard, right? They might talk a little bit of junk to each other, right? Before the game starts, right? So, you're getting that motivation preemptively before the shift even starts, creating that environment to have a success. We don't get the luxury here at City Furniture of, we can't just leave at 5 a.m. and say, hey, customer A, sorry, we didn't have enough time to pick your order, right? So, we are on a hard deadline every single night to meet our objective. And, I think when we measure on time, it's, hey, all of our customer orders picked and loaded by 5 a.m., right? That's when our service team comes in. That's when that final mile delivery aspect takes precedent to our customer. But on time is really, hey, were all your picks completed? Was there any other extra work that you got completed? How can you set up the day shift, right, to walk in and have a successful day, right? Can you help them out at all? So I think all those things, when we would consider running gamification, we saw an improvement in all those different areas.
Great. Yeah, I know that was one of the things that really excited me about gamification. Been out there in a lot of warehouses, and I think every operation has some way of kind of establishing those baseline KPIs. We also sell, for example, a labor management system that it also has a track record of providing value, but you're more like working with the industrial engineers, kind of establishing your baselines. And I guess what I've noticed over the years with those kinds of things is you once you establish the line of what is good and what you're expecting of people, it's just human nature from there, where most people are going to just get to that level or maybe a little bit above and then call it good. But I think that's where gamification kind of differentiates itself, because it does some sort of mental jujitsu where it gets people to do things that are more productive more often, like that lost time that's in between, and the little decisions they can make to be proactive or not proactive, is the kind of thing that it encourages. So yeah, I know from our perspective, if we could, that really to me kind of creates the win-win between the organization and the employee, and also differentiates your organization from the one across the street that just has the bonus plan as well. So I've always looked at it like, if we can take that, package it into something that's easy to implement, easy to onboard, easy to use, which I think Vibe has definitely accomplished. It's a compelling solution. I'm curious, Nick, when you look at the go live from your perspective and the results that you saw there, I guess, do you want to comment on how it looked from your end?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, both of you touched so many great topics, right? And it came all together kind of, right? So top-notch WMS from Infios, easy to implement, easy to connect, the energy, city furniture, and the team brought basically to the floor. And one thing stood out to me, and you said it, kind of the visibility used for the associates, what kind of challenges are ahead and how they can contribute to the overall success of the company. And Brent, if I'm not mistaken, you also use the gamification dashboard in this daily stand-ups, team meetings you just discussed, to kind of stage the associates, what kind of KPIs are relevant, what needs to be done, what is the challenge. And they do understand that they're rewarded for this if they achieve this. And I actually hear that quite often from other customers as well, that they say the associates, after they understand the value of gamification in the operations, the associates themselves come to the warehouse managers and say, hey, we want to see the data, we want to have this visibility, and yes, we want to have this healthy competition. And the healthy competition can also be that there's a team challenge out there. It doesn't have to be track per each performance individual, but also team challenge or DC versus DC. Now, all of these things come together, and you touched on a super interesting other perspective. We talked about that we can gamify any success KPI out there, but we can also create different matrices, and also to make it comparable, units of measures, right? So it can be the piece, it can be the cube, it can be probably the pallet. All of that can be specified to the specific operations of the warehouse itself. And I guess the numbers speak for themselves, right? I mean, with City Furniture, we see 7% increase in the pick rate, 11% in overall productivity. At the very end, and we have said that a couple of times now, but it comes together. It's the people doing the job out there. And if you create a motivation and engagement level, you in turn see also productivity increases for the entire company.
Yeah. Well, I guess let's do another poll and get some more feedback from the audience. Hopefully our discussion has got some of the wheels turned. We've talked about implementations and results. Just curious, if you could gamify one of the process in your warehouse tomorrow, where would you start? Is it the inbound side? Would you start with outbound and picking and shipping, inventory control, cycle counting, or quality assurance? Go ahead and select your results. We'll give you a few more seconds.
Yeah, I guess why the attendees are filling out the poll. One thing that Nick kind of brought up earlier is, we talk about rewarding our associates, right? Well, how does City actually go about rewarding our associates, right? So, I talked about, we tried several different things: gift cards, weekly productivity bonuses, buy the guys lunch or whatever. But really what we did is we try to take it one step further. So we actually partner with a third-party platform called Elite Rewards. We call it City Elite Rewards. And picture, basically, this is a company-wide shop, right? Picture a mini Amazon, where associates then can win prizes, win challenges, go on our actual Elite Rewards platform and directly select prizes, anywhere from a TV to Apple AirPods to a Visa gift card to shoes to anything that Elite Rewards provides in their shop. And recently, I mean, within the past 2 weeks, we actually got a full integration, API and everything with Vibe, Infios gamification application, and our Elite Rewards platform through City Furniture. And what that means is now an associate can not only compete in a game, right? See where they are within the challenge. And if they happen to place or their team wins in the challenge, we don't always just do individual challenges like Nick mentioned. It might be the entire team wins something for the night. They can immediately walk out of here, go right on the application and submit those for actual rewards. They can buy stuff right through the application, right? So no longer do they have to come to their manager and say, hey, can you, cash this in for an Amazon gift card? Can you cash this in for City dollars? They are in total control of what they earn and how they choose to spend it through the Elite Rewards platform. So that's been a huge driving success that we've been fighting for here over the past year, and we're starting to kind of see the fruits of that labor come to fruition now.
Oh, very cool.
Brent, I mean, you're definitely on the forefront when it comes to employee engagement and motivating your staff, and this integration just underlines also how much you care at the very end, and it's great to see that this was implemented.
Yeah. Well, let's take a look at the results. Seems like we've got a good amount of feedback here. Okay, I'm not too surprised, I guess. It looks like most people would start with the picking and shipping, which is obviously the big money maker in operations. So is that typically what you see, Nick, where things usually start?
Yes, as I said, right, it's one of the core value-adding KPIs, picks per hour, for example, which you see an immediate impact. But at the very end, all of them can be tackled with gamification. Let's start easy. One KPI, add value to the operations immediately, measurable outcomes, and then scale.
Well, I think it's a great segue to our next topic, and that's just lessons learned and what's next. So I guess, Brent, Nick, if you could both reflect on this, looking back, what would you say the biggest lesson you've learned from this gamification journey has been? And looking ahead with City Furniture, what's next for gamification more broadly?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. So, I mean, honestly, looking back over the implementation, it's really just about building the right management system. Okay, so having that meeting with your management team, setting those expectations, picking your KPIs on what you're actually going to gamify, right? Make sure it's beneficial for not only the associates but for you as an organization, and then have that clear reward system, right? That was probably my number one challenge over the past year. Is you can roll out gamification in your operation all you want. If you can't have some kind of reward system or rewards platform, no matter what it is, right? Everybody's going to be unique. To actually have that associate feel recognized, feel rewarded, good luck being successful. And that's really, across the board, right? So I think building that reward system, identifying what KPI metrics you actually want to track, and then communication. Have a good plan, whether it be a daily stand-up meeting, whether it be email communication, however, your organization is set up, go over what the challenge is, go over who's been winning the past challenges, where can we improve on, be very transparent with your team on, current state of the game, of the challenge, whatever you're running. Looking forward really quickly, before I hand it back to Nick, like I mentioned previously, we are about to roll out our last DC, right, for our overnight polling and staging gamification platform. That's where I'm located here in Tamarack, although I visit all the other DCs. That's our largest distribution center. So gamification is coming here within the matter of a couple weeks, right? And then, kind of like what Nick mentioned prior, is we're looking across our organization to see where we can leverage this technology in other places, right? We have 180 box trucks that go out to customers' homes all throughout the South Florida and North Florida region, right? How do we gamify on-time departure? How do we gamify, customer satisfaction? How do we gamify, retail in our showrooms and our stores for City Furniture, right? So obviously we're starting small, right? We're sticking with the departments that have really good metrics, but, also keep an eye out of the future to see where we can leverage it in other aspects of our business.
Yeah, sounds like some cool ideas there. Nick, how about you?
Yeah, I guess two topics stood out for me, right? So people first at the very end. We always say tech is an enabler, value creation before tech integration. Let's really understand what is the key challenge with the process you're currently looking at, who's doing the job out there, and then, yes, implementing a good reward system to give something back at the very end. And the second big topic you also touched on is communication, right? You can implement this, but you need a certain communication layer behind. And then once it's rolling, the associates will come back to the managers and say, hey, where's my new challenge? How can I implement it? What is the new reward probably out there? But you have to have a certain management buy-in at the beginning to roll it out. What we also always do is to work with the customer on their pace, to really understand where they want to implement it. You mentioned it, we started with one DC at City Furniture, added value, saw the success, and then rolled it out to the second and to the third one. I guess the success story behind of it is to really understand where we can add value along the entire value chain. We started with the pigs in the warehouse, but we do have success cases out there already with Vibe along the entire value chain, for example, in transportation, last mile delivery. So super happy to explore this also going forward.
Excellent. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. I know we are coming up towards the end of our time, but we do have a few minutes for Q&A. So Brent, first off, I want to thank you for sharing your insights. And before we wrap up, let's just take a few minutes to answer any questions. So if you haven't already, we've had some questions that have been popping up. We'll get through as many as we can, but if you have a question, go ahead and pop it in the chat window. And if we can't get to it in the time we have today, we will make sure and get back to you, after the offline, basically. So first question. Were there issues or complaints made by your employees before having the Elite Rewards integration?
Yes. The short answer is yes. It was up to the management team at each DC to use their discretion temporarily on how we were going to issue rewards, right? Some managers took it upon themselves to run to a Walmart and buy gift cards, before we had this Elite Rewards platform, and hand those out after challenges. Some of our managers got, City Furniture swag, shirts, sweatshirts to hand out, to the associates that won different challenges. But yes, I think before the integration with Elite Rewards, and that's why I said, make sure you just have a plan on how you're actually going to give out those rewards, and set a budget too. From a management team, we set our own budget per each DC, depending on how many users there are. And have that plan going into it for sure.
Gotcha. Okay, I have another one for you, and sorry to keep putting you on the spot, but
you're good.
Quite understandably, a lot of these questions are for you, Brent. Did the quality of your something moved here. Did the quality of your work go down being focused on speed, or do you guys have something built in to prevent that?
Yeah, so safety and quality are always going to come before performance. And any KPI, any thing that we do here, we actually have not seen any reduction in our quality. So we monitor point rejections, basically damages to our furniture every single morning. We are year over year drastically outpacing prior years. I mean, that's not all related to gamification, obviously. There's other efforts that the team's making there. But no, we can not only monitor what the performance of each associate is, we can also monitor the quality aspect of what they're handling, how many times they're having to handle that same product, and then track the damages from there. So those are nightly conversations of safety and efficiency that we're having with the associates. So I'd say no, we didn't sacrifice any quality. There was no further damage or escalation from that.
Gotcha. And I've seen this question pop up, or at least this theme pop up a couple times, but the question is about low performers. So do you performance manage low performers? Are there minimum standards, or is there only the carrot of gamification?
Definitely not. We do not live in a perfect world. Every associate that we have at City Furniture has a minimum productivity standard that they have to meet, whether I mentioned before, whether that's cubes and or pieces, right? So we don't have to hit both of them, but we ask you to hit one of them. We already have, though, fundamentally performance improvement programs through the company that the supervisors and managers meet weekly with the associate on. right? So one thing when we first rolled out gamification is we would try to reward every associate that took part in the game, call it a participation trophy if you want. But that's how we kind of got those lower performers at least engaged in making them feel like, hey, they're a part of it. Whether you hit goal, whether you didn't, we want to give you something. Then, after a while, you start having those conversations on performance, which the managers were already having, and hopefully pull those associates up. But one thing I will add is, if you put a leadership board out in your company, we're very visible at City Furniture, right? For our performance. Some of those things take care of themselves, right? So some of those associates don't want to be, finishing, last in some of those challenges naturally, right? So you see a little bit of that too, that self-motivation kick in. But
gotcha.
Yeah.
And let me add to this one, please, because I hear that often. Within Vibe, you have the opportunity also to create kind of a growth plan per individual, right? So you can set a certain challenge per individual and differentiate also between a high performer and someone who is kind of, just on the learning path currently, and you differentiate there a little bit to not completely demotivate these people, but rather show them what is possible out there and motivate them step by step. So yes, that's considered within Vibe as well.
Yeah, I think that actually is a good segue to the next question, which I think is probably best answered by you, Nick, is how does the gamification, how do you make sure it remains fair and motivating for everyone, especially in cases where senior associates are consistently at the top of the leaderboard?
So what we often discuss with customers out there, set different challenges, right? So you have, for example, one team challenge, one bigger challenge, so everybody can contribute. Depending on the company culture, you can send then this leaderboard perspective, but again, you can also set challenges per individual, right? So you always have the top performers. You always will have the most visible on the shop floor and the warehouse out there. Again, add different challenges, a team challenge and performance challenges per individual to kind of take them with you on the learning curve, on the growth path.
Balance it out. That makes sense. And this is an interesting question as well for you. Have you seen any difference in the gamification types culturally, like between Europe and the USA?
I mean, first of all, gamification is all around us, right? So we can collect points and coins when we learn a new language or turn, points into fuel, and that is also very present in Europe. Yes, gamification is more known in the US, but it's picking up in Europe on the B2C side very quickly. And with Vibe, it's not possible to bring it to the B2B, to the work side.
Gotcha. I think we have probably time for one more question. I think we're actually down to our last one. So this one I think is for you again, Nick. So what does the implementation process look like? How do they get engaged, and how long before they would typically see a return on investment?
Yeah. So again, depending on the availability, on the connection, but again, we're connected to WA Advantage and Edge from Infios, so that's super easy to turn on. We can be live within 2 weeks. We have a couple of training sessions. We support with the communication to the team, and we help you also to set up the first challenges. After this, we're constantly working side by side with you. If you want this, we have an eye on the numbers, on the KPIs, and also assist to invent and create new challenges. Depending on how you have the management buy-in and how it's implemented, you see very quickly success on easy KPIs like the pick rate, and then let's scale it, let's extend it, and discover together where we can add additional value.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, again, thank you to both of you. I'm going to turn it back over to Camilla for our closing remarks. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. So that's the end of our webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today. We got a lot of great questions. If your question didn't get answered live, no worries. Our team will follow up with you directly after the session. Remember, this webinar was recorded, so you will get an email soon with the on-demand link. You can use that same link to download the materials we are sharing. A huge thank you to our amazing presenters, Brent, Nick, Alan. Thank you so much for sharing those insights and this energy. And before you go, please take a quick moment to complete the short survey that we have. Your feedback will help us to keep improving and level up every event that we're doing. Thank you again to everyone, and have a fantastic day or evening wherever you are. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.